Welcome to our conference, Creative Collaborations for the Future, Drivers for Interdisciplinary and Cross-Sectoral Innovations in Europe. My name is Wolfgang Gumpelmeier-Mach. I'm working as a project and communication manager for Creative Region Linz and Upper Austria. We boost, connect and evolve companies and people from the creative industries and creative regions. So we are also part of the COCO4CCI partnership consortium, which is organizing this conference. COCO4CCI is short for Collaboration Collider for Cultural and Creative Industries, and is a project funded with support from the European Commission through the Interac Central Europe program. So if you have any questions to that and to the conference in general, maybe you can start also using our chat and introduce yourself. We will, of course, introduce us a little bit more in the next minutes and hours. And the link to our project, COCO4CCI, will also be posted in the chat in a few seconds by my colleagues. Yes, in the last 3 years with COCO4CCI, we connected creatives from Central Europe with companies in the manufacturing area and in the manufacturing business. So with other industries by implementing various activities, and the goal, or we were aiming to foster innovation processes in the respective sectors. So each of our partners worked with creatives, cultural people from the cultural and creative industries, together with manufacturing companies, and we learned a lot about co-creation, cross-innovation, different design processes and approaches, creative tools and methods and formats, and of course try to create new business models and think out of the box. And we learned also a lot about current or future challenges of the companies. And today we want to share a few of these experiences with you in that context. But although our project closes now, we also want to look into the future, especially when it comes to designing new business models, products, services and jobs with a focus on sustainability, inclusion and knowledge sharing. And this is why we connected our topics with the new European Bauhaus initiative that brings together citizens, experts, businesses and institutions, and facilitates discussions about creating a better tomorrow. And also it mobilizes different groups like designers, architects, engineers, scientists, students and creative minds across disciplines to reimagine sustainable living in Europe and beyond. And in a way, that's what we also did in the COCO4CCI project for the last 3 years. So our conference will introduce, on the one hand, the COCO4CCI approach and the learnings, and also the new European Bauhaus, and will showcase creative approaches and cross-sectoral innovations in Europe, because they are highly valuable for boosting economic and social development in Europe. Before we start with an introduction by my colleague from Slovenia, Grit Ackermann, and Mr. Ebermann from the Interac office, I will introduce you a little bit to the agenda and the speakers. And also will introduce you a little bit to the organizational points. So after the short introduction of our project and its outcomes by my colleague Grit Ackermann from the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Slovenia, we will get a quick overview of the Interac Central Europe funding program by project manager and evaluation manager Christoph Ebermann. And in about 15 to 20 minutes, we will then have our first talk by Michaela Magas. She's designer and innovation advisor to the European Commission, and a lot more. She will tell us later herself. And in her keynote, she will introduce the new European Bauhaus and will answer a few questions about it afterwards. And then we head over to the inspirational talks. So we have in total, we will have 4 inspirational talks and best practices from Central Europe. And at around 10, Yuri Kaplan introduces his experiences and showcases his experiences in that sector. And this is also followed by a very short Q&A, and then a short break for 5 to 10 minutes, like we call it a bio break, so you can grab a coffee or go somewhere important. After the break, the short break, we carry on and continue with the second inspirational talk by Agnes Polkowska. And then at around 11, so after these two inspirational talks, we have the possibility to join one of our 3 breakout rooms. So there is a networking session planned after the first 2 inspirational talks. So we have 3 breakout rooms, one with Yuri, one with Agnes, and one which is an open room for everyone else. So you can have then a public break together with other participants, or you can choose to go and join in one of the 2 rooms with the speakers that you heard before and dive deeper into their topics and discuss and network together with them. Our technical host, David Rötler, will support you in moving you to the respective rooms, but you can also do it for yourself here in Zoom. If you have any questions, of course, as I said, please use the chat. And after this networking session, we have 2 more inspirational talks and best practices, one by Rafaela Seitz from Hamburg Cross Innovation Lab, and one from Arthur Mamumani. He will join us a little bit later on the topic of new technologies, 3D printing architecture. And after these 2 talks, we will again split up into the breakout rooms, this time then with Rafaela and Arthur, and of course the public room is also there for you to join and network. And at around 12:30, we will then meet again and have a final round and a conclusion, and we will give you a quick outlook of the future steps of our projects and other informations and networking opportunities. By the way, networking, I will post a link to the chat in a few seconds, or my colleague David can post the Padlet, which we prepared. This is for networking purposes. So we opened this and you can add your name, your background and expertise, and with a picture and your LinkedIn account there, and can add every important and relevant info that you like, and you can have a look at all the other participants and speakers later and see who is there and with whom you want to connect. And we will also send around, of course, all these links and everything that we recorded here and documented here afterwards to you, so that it also stays. Because of course, after the conference, maybe you want to dive deeper into the topics and maybe also connect with other people. So, and also we have a Slido prepared with questions for you that where you can add questions to the speakers, and you can also upvote them. And I will take them and ask them in the Q&A sessions then later after the respective talks. We will also post this link in a few moments. And yes, as I said, we will record all the talks and everything and send you a summary after the recording, after the conference. And that's it from me for now. I hope you don't have too many questions. Otherwise, please use the chat for questions and introducing yourself. And I'm really looking forward to some inspiring inputs and discussions, and give the word to Grit Ackermann. Welcome.
Good morning to everybody, and thank you for being today with us here at the conference. My name is Grit Ackermann. I work for the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Slovenia, and I had the honor to coordinate the COCO4CCI project for the past 3 years, together with a great team of partners. I will shortly introduce you to the project, what we did, our results, and also our major learnings and recommendations for the future. We are 12 partners from 6 countries, and we worked in tandems. So each tandem representing a traditional business support partner and a creative organization. And looking back, I would say that was really essential for our project's success. So COCO4CCI stands for Cultural and Creative Cooperation Collider, and what you can see on the picture is actually a real collider. A collider is a term from physics, and this is a particle accelerator. So it accelerates particles to a very high kinetic energy and lets them impact on other particles. And the energy generated by these accelerations is higher than the sum of both parts. So actually 1 + 1 makes 3. And this is also what we want to do with our COCO4CCI project. We are following this idea by colliding or accelerating creative industries to impact on technology-oriented manufacturers. So with COCO4CCI, we connected the best of both worlds. The open mindset, the innovative approaches, and the know-how of the creative sector, with the experiences and the technology-driven power of advanced manufacturers. So why manufacturers? Manufacturers are under pressure to rethink their traditional focus on products and services. And in manufacturing, the mantra was for a long time that innovation and product development results only from technology advancement. So catching up with technological development and digitalization is, of course, still a major challenge for manufacturers, but they realize more and more that also other trends and aspects are becoming more important. So services, for instance, are crucial for creating a competitive advantage. Also sustainability, individualization, and customization of products and services. This requires rethinking of products and business models that goes with these products. And here are the opportunities for creatives. They represent new mindsets and new know-how, and they look for opportunities outside their traditional paths and for new customers. So how did this go actually in our project? There are a lot of stereotypes. There's a lack of knowledge on the opposite sector. The thinking that both worlds are incompatible because of the different mindsets, the different languages, or the different work models. So we started in our project with awareness and opportunities to learn and meet with the opposite sector. The aim was to show the common goal, the common interest, and facilitate the aligning of interests of both sectors. Very clearly, innovation is a common goal, but also the strong interest in digitalization, sustainability, and design. The right side of the brain represents emotions and creativity, and so stands for the culture and creative sector, while the left side of the brain represents data-based, technical and analytical thinking, which is more dominant in traditional industries. So bringing both sides together should foster rethinking, innovation, and looking at products, processes, or challenges from a different angle, and ensuring a holistic approach. So our whole brainer concept prepares the left and the right brainers for a successful collaboration and creates the awareness to different modes of operating and develops a better understanding of the other sector. So they would not perceive their skills, mindsets, and competences as opposite, but as complementary, seeing their different backgrounds as beneficial. The next step was to facilitate cross-sectoral collaboration. And here we work with a wide range of matchmaking formats. And the basic idea was that the manufacturers and our project presented the challenges to creatives, or that both the manufacturer and the creative worked together to define a challenge, and then would follow a facilitation process to work together on the ideas and create a match for collaboration. This was not always easy. We have to say that was actually very difficult. For instance, defining a challenge with the manufacturer and translating it into a language that the creative understands and can relate to. It was also difficult for manufacturer maybe to leave the familiar and accept or being ready to follow a new approach. When finally an idea was accepted by the manufacturer, then also to get the management support or the top management support and to allocate fundings to finance this new and innovative project collaboration. I don't want to go into the details, but I would like to say that expectation management and facilitation by a whole-brainer was of key importance. So a whole-brainer would be a person that knows and understands both worlds, the manufacturers and the creatives. By now, we have created or initialized about 30 partnerships in our countries, with many more in the negotiation phase. And we are preparing a success story publication that will also present our lessons learned and experiences. And soon this publication will be also available on our website, and we will update you about it. The remaining time I would like to use to speak about our policy recommendations that derive from our experiences. The first one, I summarize this to four main recommendations. The first one is about the business support infrastructure. In all countries, we have a business support infrastructure, however, which is mainly targeted at traditional business sectors. So action is needed to open up this traditional business support ecosystem to the creative sector. And this should include the promotion, for instance, of the creative sector by showcasing its impact and potential, but also the facilitation of cross-innovation. On the other hand, there is a support infrastructure that is solely dedicated to cultural and creative sector, which is also provided and financed by the cultural sector. And these creative hubs also lack linkages with other industry sectors and don't support cross-sectoral collaboration. In COCO4CCI, we worked as a tandem of the traditional and the creative business support. And we created the linkages to facilitate this cross-sectoral collaboration, but that's rather the exception than the rule. And I'm glad that we will have today an inspirational talk with Raffaella Seitz from the Cross Innovation Hub in Hamburg and learn more about their experiences in Germany. Another important aspect is incentives. For instance, voucher schemes are a very popular business support instrument for small and medium-sized enterprises that helps reducing financial risk for a company when testing new approaches. However, these innovation vouchers are often focused on technology transfer and research-based information, and consequently are often not to be used only with research institutions. They don't fit for creatives or for cross-sectoral collaboration. So our recommendation is to open up the existing voucher systems for cross-sectoral collaborations in the CCI sector. Recognizing the contribution of cultural and creative industry for economic and social growth in Europe is a necessary step to encourage cross-sectoral collaboration. A shared vision should be developed and strategies which highlight the innovation potentials through CCI. These strategies should include also cross-sectoral collaboration, take into account the development of the creative sector beyond national borders and of less well-established segments of the cultural and creative sector. And finally, more groundwork and research is needed. In order to assess the impact of cultural and creative sector on the economy, data needs to be collected and evaluated at EU level and at national level or regional level in a uniform manner to enable transnational comparison. Only with better research on cultural and creative industries, we can adapt and improve policies and support measures. So these policy recommendations are very soon also available on our website. They are already available as a short version on our website as publication, and very soon we will have a more comprehensive document ready, which you will also find on our website. So I hope this was an interesting short insight into our project work. I'm glad that we will have today the opportunity to dive deeper into cross-sectoral collaborations, and I wish us all, but especially our guests, an interesting day.
Thanks, Grit, for the introduction of our project and also the policy recommendations. And I would like to welcome Mr. Ebermann from the Interac Central Europe program to share some insights on this respective program and the visions behind it. So welcome, Christoph Ebermann.
Thank you, and good morning from my side. It's really a pleasure to be here at this final conference of the COCO4CCI project, and I'm very much looking forward to all the inspirational talks which are going to come in the morning. In my presentation, I'd like to give you a little frame of the COCO4CCI project, which is framed within the Interac Central Europe program. And for this, I will be sharing with you my screen. Just 1 second. You should see my presentation in full presentation mode now. I'd like to give you a bit an overview on what actually we are doing in the Interac Central Europe program in order to foster cooperation on culture. Maybe to start with, what is actually the Interac Central Europe program? The Interac Central Europe program is a transnational cooperation program which stretches from the Baltic to the Adriatic Sea, covering 9 countries, and which has been supporting and financing cooperation projects in this cooperation area for the past 7 years, or like the programming is always for 7 years. Our program has 4 priorities: 1 dealing with innovation, 1 with culture and environment, 1 with nature, and culture and environment, 1 with low carbon, and 1 with transport. In total, in the past, I would call it past program, because we're already moving ahead to the new program, as you will see in a few slides. Since our projects from this past program are almost ending, or by summer of this year, they will all have ended, because we are at the end of this programming period. In total, we have supported 138 cooperation projects in the program area, which allowed the cooperation of more than 1,400 institutions. If we zoom in now into the field of culture, we have been supporting 24 cooperation projects, allowing more than 240 institutions to cooperate, which represented around 39 million ERDF funding, because the funding of the Interac Central Europe program and the co-financing of projects like COCO4CCI comes from the European Regional Development Fund. In terms of mapping of the cooperation, you can see on this slide on the map, a cooperation map, where it is visible the intensity of cooperation and of the linkages created alone in the field of culture. So since numbers like 245 institutions cooperating, it's difficult to visualize, and I believe one picture says more than a number. In this case, you can really see that the cooperation across borders, not only between regions, but especially between countries in the Central Europe area, has really been fostered in the field of culture. But doing this, we support the culture projects in the field of culture and creative industries, but also other projects dealing more with, for example, setting up of culture routes, or dealing with the tangible cultural heritage sites, improving the management, the valorization of the sites for regional development purposes. Like you can see on this one picture in the third, where we have tools on this slide and this in this infographics, we also had one project which is really a very interesting project dealing with the accessibility of musea for people with disabilities, and creating an accessibility label, which is now promoted throughout Central Europe and also being put forward at European level. So very interesting projects, and I'm always very glad to be at final conferences to see the outcomes, the learnings, and also listening to Ms. Ackermann's presentation, where these conclusions and recommendations in terms of policy were presented, because I believe some of these elements we actually also integrated already in our new program, which I'm delighted to see, and to introduce also briefly our new program is in terms of program area, basically the same. We are just having one additional region, which has been added to the program area. The new program, this 21-27, has just started. Until 2027, we will have around 224 million euro ERDF in order to foster cooperation in the program area. In total, we're having 4 programs priorities again, one dealing more with innovation, one which is more on environment, one on transport, and a very interesting one which is actually on improving the governance, because interesting in the sense as we heard and we will hear a lot today about the necessity of cross-sectoral cooperation and integrated approaches. And this 4th priority has its focus is exactly on integrated cross-sectoral projects, which are not just thematic or sectoral projects, which you might expect from in other fields. But also, if you look into the topic of culture, which you don't find actually in the header of our future 9 program-specific objectives, culture we are seeing in the new program as a horizontal topic, which is actually integrated and can be supported within various different program-specific objectives. Like, for example, in the field of strengthening innovation capacities, we have exactly this reference to supporting projects on cross-sectoral cooperation, including with CCIs. So very similar to what we are having now with the COCO4CCI project. We're having a reference to skills for smart specialization and entrepreneurship also in the field of CCIs within our program-specific objective 1.2. But we are also having culture projects, for example, in the field of the energy transition and the transition to a more climate neutral Central Europe by finding climate neutral solutions for cultural heritage buildings or buildings which are under monument protection. So where again, you have to think beyond just one sector, integrating various fields and various expertise in an integrated way. Or another example is in terms of climate resilience. We also have included a specific reference to the increasing and fostering the climate resilience of cultural heritage sites. We already had a project in that field, and that was also very fascinating to see the world of culture experts dealing with the rescue teams and with the developing risk management plans for the cities affected and for the sites. So very interesting, I think, perspectives, especially taking up this view on the necessity of cooperating beyond borders, which anyway is a must in our program, but also beyond thematic borders, allowing a cross-sector cooperation between different fields. With these topics, we had launched in late autumn our first call, which we just closed last week, where we had all 4 program priorities open and also all SOs open with an indicative budget of 72 million euro ERDF. It appears, what we could also see in the various events which we did link to the call, that the interest was really high. And just to say that the budget requested from the 280 applications which we received is nearly 500 million euros. So it's 6.8 times the funds which we have available for this for this call, just to illustrate the high interest which these topics, and apparently there's also especially this thinking beyond borders and this cross-sectoral approaches are having. So we're very much looking forward to see then the outcomes, of course, of this call, where decisions will hopefully be taken still this year. And at the end of this year, we will also be working towards the second call of our program, which will be dealing with a new type of projects, which we call pioneer projects, which will be having an indicative budget of around 10 million euros. With this, I hope I created further interest of you in the Interact Central Europe program, also setting the frame for the COCO4CCI project. If you want to know more about not only COCO4CCI, but also the other projects which we are supporting in the field of culture, please visit our website, where we have different sections for all these topics where we are supporting projects. There's culture, but also environment, innovation, transport, and low carbon, but where you can also find on our website there's further information on the new funding opportunities in our program in this upcoming programming period. And with this, I would hand back the word to Mr. Gumpelmeier-Mach, and I wish you all a very good conference, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussions and presentations during this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ebermann. Very interesting funding opportunities and also topics coming up through the Interact Central Europe program. So everyone is invited to have a deeper look and more detailed look on the website. Yes, thanks, Mr. Ebermann. Enjoy the talks. And now we would proceed with the keynote by Michaela Margas. Hi, Michaela. I'd like to welcome you. Michaela is a designer who bridges science and art, design and technology, and also academic research and the industry, which is very important also in our context. And she is chair of the Industry Commons Foundation, innovation advisor to the European Commission and the G7 leaders, and member of President von der Leyen's high-level roundtable for the new European Bauhaus, and member of the advisory board of CERN Idea Square, and so much more. I'm sure you can look it up, or she will tell you in a few seconds. I remind you again to our Padlet, where we collect all the participants and the LinkedIn accounts from the participants and all the expertises. So feel free to add your profile there. And in the meantime, you can listen to Michaela's talk. She will speak about 10 years of feeding policy from grassroots creative experimentation with multidisciplinary communities that unite the culture and creative industries with scientific researchers and industrial partners. And she's going to show us some hands-on approaches, and I'm really looking forward to it. The stage is yours, Michaela. Welcome again.
Thank you so much for this really generous introduction. It's a great pleasure to be here, and particularly with this pioneering project. Really, I was having a meeting yesterday with the colleagues from Interac, and this project was actually highlighted as a real best practice in terms of the current concerns that we have in terms of placing culture at the center of activities, in terms of all of the priorities that NEB has highlighted. So it's a great pleasure to be here. And I'm starting from the point of view of cross-domain collaborations, because really this is what this project is about, COCO4CCI, but also what the European Bauhaus is about, and also what the work that I have been doing for the last 10 years in feeding policy directly from grassroots experimentation from multidisciplinary communities. So I will start with the very famous moment when the European Bauhaus was announced by President von der Leyen as a co-creation space where architects, artists, students, engineers, and designers work together. So this idea of multidisciplinarity, cross-disciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, or transdisciplinarity, whichever way you like to frame it, was highlighted as something that's really essential now and extremely important. And a lot has happened since. This is something that we can cover a bit later in the talk. But what I want to talk about first is, where did these ideas come from? And I would say that some of the communities that have been part of the COCO4CCI project, and also some of the rest of us who have been working on placing culture at the center of cross-domain collaboration, have actually influenced policy quite a great deal in terms of getting to this point. So I'm going to start with member of our community. I have founded MTF Labs 10 years ago now, and we have had over 8,000 contributors to MTF Labs. And this is Dmytro Izotov. He joined us in our labs at Slush in Helsinki. Dmytro is Ukrainian, and I decided to start with Dmytro because I have been following what he's doing right now. He joined us as a volunteer back then. He thought that he didn't have much to contribute to a cross-disciplinary innovation space, and it turned out that he was very quickly integrated into the labs and actually turned out to be a really great inventor. And this is just a case in point. What Dmytro is doing now, I think, is incredibly relevant for the moment that we are living through right now. He's part of the Global Shapers in Ukraine. This is the World Economic Forum group that's a network of inspiring young people under the age of 30 working together to address local, regional, and global challenges. And this is the way that communities on the ground are galvanizing together. This is why it's so important to support collaboration on the ground. And you can see Dmytro here listed as the core group that's actually being supported by the Cabinet of the Ministers of Ukraine to canvas for support for Ukraine. And we are sincerely hoping that Dmytro is keeping safe and that this initiative will continue. But this is just an example of what comes out of these communities who are so important in all of these aspects, not just as a sort of soft practice, but actually this is really powerful practice, this joining of forces. And Dmytro was seen at the beginning of this video as part of this group that contributed to what was probably a seminal moment in the 10 years of our labs, where we really had a case of human transformation that was so evident. We placed blind singer at the center of our activities here with 30 cross-disciplinary practitioners and experts. They designed a system whereby she was able to play music directly from her brain. And in the labs during this week in preparation for Slush in Helsinki, all of the people in the lab were able to train with this system to try and go up and down the musical scale using their brain. And it would take them about 2 hours to do so. But then Rika, who is a vocal coach from the Sibelius Academy, put the neurofeedback sensor on, and she was able to play instantly. And then it dawned on us that the affordances that we present to people, the tools that we can invent for people, completely determine as to whether we call them able or disabled. And Rika was stuck with a paradigm that was developed during the mechanical era, when she wouldn't have been able to see a lever or a button to press. And therefore, as a result of that, she was categorized as someone with a disability, whereas actually turned out that, for instance, in an era of brain-computer interfaces and data-driven systems, she was far more talented than the rest of us. And this, of course, makes complete sense when you think about the fact that before there was the invention of a piano, we could not have had a pianist virtuoso. And before anybody invented a racing car, you couldn't have had a racing car driver champion. So the affordances that we build for people, these are absolutely essential in how we enable people to express themselves or to interact with society. And this is something that drives us. This is very much community driven. So what I wanted to do is also give you a very short insight, a few seconds of the community themselves saying, what do they think that these labs do for them, or what are they about?
O MTF é criatividade, humanidade e diversidade.
Overwhelming, it's awe-inspiring and it gives me hope.
É uma família.
Exciting.
Conhecimento.
Partilha.
Passion.
Collaboration.
Criatividade.
Progressive.
Amor.
Sensing. Creative chaos.
Parque de diversões para nerds.
So yeah, this park for nerds is really how we started. 10 years ago, I founded MTF Labs with the idea that we needed to unite artists and scientists and academia and industry in a space of common understanding. And I was told that this was impossible because everybody spoke different languages. And I think for COCO4CCI, this is very, very clear. I think this is what the project has also been addressing. So what you can see here on the image, this is us, the Brainwave Quartet with the London Symphony Orchestra at the Barbican in London, bridging disciplines. And we were able to do this by placing music as a social glue. And at that time, I was directing a roadmap, an EU roadmap, and I actually noticed that the brilliance of the engineers and some of the research breakthroughs were completely disconnected from culture, from industry, and therefore the two sides needed to be joined together. So this was noticed when we were invited to take residence at the Microsoft Research New England by a whole series of luminary academics who were inspired by our activities and decided to create a manifesto for this, really stating, highlighting how this can be a central force that unites, in this case, all areas of research. And we took this manifesto directly when we flew back. We flew to Luxembourg, this is 2014, so the creative unit was in Luxembourg at that time, and we took the manifesto directly to them, and they couldn't believe it, that actually American Ivy League colleges had actually backed something that was originally a European idea. And this is another image that's really very much a case in point of the environment that we create, because this is not just a set of methods. This is actually a whole environment that is conducive to particular types of collaboration. In this case, during the biggest issue that we had with the huge immigration crisis in Europe in 2016, this is Rani Dar from Israel collaborating with Ahmad Bakri from Palestine in our labs in Berlin, basically breaking down divides. And then I took it upon myself to actually question what we can be as humans and how we are categorized and seen by people and what else we can be, and actually challenge ideas that people have only one specialism and this is how they get boxed in. So for instance, here we have women in charge of technology areas in our largest event to date, which was over 800 people hands-on prototyping, deliberately placing role models that are different in the sense that you can be a world-renowned professor of robotics and AI, but also be a fashion designer in your spare time, or someone who is a global artist like Imogen Heap as also a blockchain activist, for example. And as a result of this type of opening our ideas towards what else we can be, we ended up with a technology prototyping event that had 53% declare themselves as female out of 4 options that we gave them. And this is from 800 participants, transgenerational participants, as you can see from the photograph, from the age of 3 to something like 73, I believe it was the eldest. So the social impacts are really quite incredible, but also economic impacts. I mean, this is one of our members, Tim Palm, also known as DJ Arthro, who again joined us. He didn't think he had much to contribute, but he had built himself a whole rig already. And then with the help of the community, he was enabled to do multiple tasks at the same time. It resulted in an innovation incubation award, then international sound awards at the Reeperbahn Festival the following year for the team. He was featured on the BBC 2 days after he premiered with his new tools. He's a music producer and video producer. He went on tour in London, in Korea. He now runs his own business, and he actually works with us as well. And then challenging, again, what we can do with frontier technologies. So this is, for instance, a new ongoing format that challenges previous music formats using artificial intelligence that have been worked on for many, many years. So we have developed experts basically within our community who are really high-level experts, for instance, in this case, in artificial intelligence and particularly neural networks. And as we know, the arts have been actually trailblazing on this front. So there are lots of artists out there really very much at the forefront of huge interest to industry, because obviously there are certain challenges that are being solved in these experimental environments that are of great relevance to industry. And here's us in residence at the largest unicorn in Europe, a phenomenal, huge company that services all the global communications for the biggest social channels. Infobip. And so this company emerged out of a small region of Istria in Europe without any Silicon Valley money, and hugely inspiring for that. And we were invited to take residence to bring the community and interact with people they brought from their offices from around the world. So this is, again, how we interact with industry. And then industry came to us, or started coming to us already when we run our pilots with new kind of enabling tools. We put new kinds of toolkits into the hands of our developers, which led to all sorts of follow-up funding and patents and patent filing for primary industry, for example, and entrepreneurs by Forbes and MIT under 35, etc. But in this case, for example, we have Christian Gutmann, who's VP for AI for the third biggest ICT company in the world, asking us, can I be part of your labs for a week? And he actually worked transgenerationally with all of the participants, and for the whole week was actually using this for personal development. And this is what's so interesting when this happens, and this is something that we keep seeing. So we actually evolved our methods and our tools to something called the Industry Commons, something that I launched back in 2017. It has since become a track, a funding program within Horizon. And so this idea of feeding best practice to policy instruments has been really quite successful. I have literally proof of 74% of the recommendations for the Horizon program, for the innovation recommendations that the Connect Advisory Forum had, came directly from our best practice. And then, of course, the regional dimension. So as the Industry Commons came round, and this is the mayor of Mannheim, very innovative mayor of a very creative city that's positioning itself in amongst the other industrial strongholds, let's say, around it in a very, very creative and interesting way. And these are ice labs that they were being announced in 2020. Then, of course, the pandemic hit, and we are going to run them this summer. But this regional dimension is so tremendously important. As I mentioned, I was actually hosting a meeting between Commissioner Ferreira's cabinet, Committee of the Regions, and Interreg Europe yesterday to see how we can align on launching a whole series of labs in an agile way across all of the European regions to create a spark that would unleash lots of new projects. And watch this space. This is something that we are working on really hard now. This is part of some of the initiatives we are taking at the European Bauhaus, and we are allowed as members of the high-level roundtable to literally run with it if we have an idea like this. Talking about the European Bauhaus and about the values of the European Bauhaus, which are, of course, sustainability, inclusion, and aesthetics. And this is something that is obviously very relevant to some of the examples I've been showing you. During the pandemic, we decided to situate ourselves literally in the environment, in one of the areas of the largest biodiversity and one of the largest wetlands in Europe, in the Rio de Aveiro in Portugal. And in 2021, our theme was Just Ocean. And this idea of just could be interpreted in many different ways. And the idea of judicious, unbiased, safe, and transparent actually came from our work with data and the need that we need to actually annotate data when we work with it in terms of its biases, because no data is unbiased. But then we applied that thinking, so again, cross-disciplinary thinking, to our interaction with the environment. We had 24 people in person from, 50 people in person from 24 countries and 8 global satellites in Toronto, Chicago, Mexico City, Rio, and across European regions as well, joining us. So this is these are the experts in situ, cross-disciplinary community in the salt pans of Aveiro, an area of huge biodiversity. And what we have done is we have literally a minute of people explaining what does transdisciplinary collaboration mean for them. So we'll just listen to them for a minute.
MTF to me is a meeting of minds, and it's also a meeting of hearts. There are so many people that work, create, and truly, passionately believe in a transdisciplinary approach.
To have artists and scientists and academics and industry come together and essentially cross the streams and collaborate and be in a room with people they ordinarily wouldn't have a chance to interact with, so that knowledge can sort of cross boundaries and so forth. And I think that's where the best and most imaginative innovation comes from.
It's been really fun. Well, first of all, just witnessing everybody's contributions and everybody's ideas, and also witnessing the way that people are talking, exchanging ideas, not necessarily always agreeing on everything, but also allowing this sort of non-contradictory information to remain in the space and to bubble into new ideas and new collaboration.
A oportunidade, estamos num ambiente multidisciplinar em que há especialistas e apaixonados por diferentes áreas e as conversas que acontecem na programação conseguem ser, se calhar, suplantadas pela riqueza das conversas que se têm em paralelo.
And so these collaborative environments will be familiar to you, but then there's also where do we get with them, or what do we manage to achieve? And so there is another clip about personal transformations, literally from the participants, and I always feel that it's best if you hear it from them.
Por outro lado, estar exposto a tantas pessoas interessantes e tantas pessoas criativas e tantas ideias e parece que há uma energia especial no ar nesta semana, neste edifício com estas pessoas, que eu acho que nos põe todos num estado mental de procurar coisas novas e de questionar, se calhar, as coisas a que estamos habituados, de ver coisas de outra forma. As conferências que temos visto e as pessoas que temos visto a falar já aconteceu várias vezes durante a semana, porém-me a pensar em várias coisas da minha vida, não só no meu trabalho, mas porque me oferecem pontos de vista novos.
I think the way this is going to affect my work is that I've just found a whole bunch of people who think in much the same way as I do. It sort of struck me on the first day, I think, that all these other people were saying things that have been rattling around in my brain for a long time, some of which I'd acted on, and others that I was sort of thinking that would be quite good to get underway. So, yeah, I found it, and I'm still finding it, remarkably inspiring.
Tanta informação que tenho recebido estes dias, que acho que esta informação se vai transformar em inspiração futura para as minhas criações próprias.
Esta experiência já está a valer a pena, já valeu a pena e já vai contribuir não só para o meu projeto, mas para mim enquanto pessoa.
So basically the process involved literally immersing ourselves into the environment. And in this case, what you're looking at is the first recording of underwater overtone singing, which is an experiment which was then used later in performance and in all of the collaborative work. And again, this is about addressing challenges hands-on. So once again, we can actually listen for a few seconds.
Climate action is such a huge part of what we need to be thinking about. And there is the digital transition and there's the green transition. And what we do is about bringing those two things together. It's about how can we make new things that not just stop us impacting badly on the world, but actually positively improve it. And so the ambition of particularly this MTF Labs, Just Ocean, is to try and put together people who can actually make a huge difference like that.
And then some people here are also interested in ritual, in indigenous science, in climate justice, in kind of ecological logic and ecological thought processes as we make music, as we create in general, and what is wasteful and what is rooted and what is necessary and what is superfluous. So, you know, at a maker type event, it's pretty special to have voices that think about ecology and about somatics.
Inspired by oceans, inspired by acoustics, inspired by deep space, questions about environment, and you bring them all together, it makes you feel like you're part of a family. And this is what MTF did for me.
So, as I say, it's always best if you hear it from the community. I mean, there's more, but this is, for example, Anya, whom you just heard during the final performance. We had 11 projects that came out, no, actually 13, I believe. And one project that was a collaboration between 40 participants, and it was a 6-part symphony about the environment, about different aspects of our interaction with the environment, our impact on the environment. Too much to cover here, but and I will skip over. You can actually hear them speak about how it's important to focus on small things. But I want to really focus on this amazing group of people that I have the privilege to be working with. And the fact that these are the people who recognize that some of these activities, and particularly placing culture in the center, as has been already mentioned today, is so important for our advancement in all areas. And so the European Bauhaus, as many of you will be by now aware, has not only people who are leading on it, but also 250 partners, amazing partners who are really very active and active contributors to the process of co-creation. The new European Bauhaus being founded on the principles of sustainability, inclusion and aesthetics, but of course evolving all kinds of ideas around the delivery and the methods. And currently the partners are helping us in formulating the idea of the NEB lab, so obviously very relevant to the material that we've just seen. And the ideas have been flooding in, and literally hundreds and thousands of fantastic creative ideas that have been flooding in. The first conference that was run last year had over 8,000 participants, so it really showed the uptake of these ideas, and the language here is very clear to everybody who's part of this conference now, which is very much related to the language that has been used in the cultural creative sector for a long time. And also I want to highlight the fact that Central Europe is currently not submitting enough applications for the NEB prize. These are the prizes from last year, which with a few clicks you can enter this virtual space on the European Commission portal to see that last year's entries. And this year prizes are guaranteed for every country. So every single country in Central Europe should actually encourage great projects that you know of to apply. This is as part of the high-level roundtable. Again, as I say, I'm very privileged to be able to work with these people. I can tell you that right now they have already joined forces over the Ukraine, and they're having an previously unplanned meeting now, or emergency meeting, if you like, to discuss what we can do, because of course all of us can do something about it. So there is action being taken, and for example, Shigeru Ban, a Japanese architect, has already offered design for shelters that can be deployed to the Ukraine. So we are looking at how we can do that. So it's really going from the grassroots, and the first thing that we mapped as high-level roundtable were our values. This is how we decided to work. We had to work really quickly. We had to work very effectively and efficiently because all the people are very, very busy with their projects. So the first thing we did was map our values, and we discovered a very strong line of justice. And this is where we decided was our starting point. We then wrote a concept paper, which is accessible online. Please do have a look at it. And this is one of the quotes from it, highlighting a pragmatic hope, grounded visions, and actionable ambition. So basically, I illustrated it with this wonderful Alan Fletcher illustration, old illustration from Domus. Architecture is optimism. And when we mapped the outcomes, desired outcomes, one of the strongest things was the idea of learning through doing, so being hands-on in these collaborative prototyping environments. And so, of course, one of the quotes from our paper is, support new interdisciplinary thinking, designing and making collaborative innovation labs and experimental learning labs. Hence the design of the NEB lab and this grand ambition that we're currently advocating for, where we want to inject a spark in 100 regions across Europe so that everybody is involved in this prototyping on the ground. So also to conclude this series of developments of feeding policy directly from the grassroots, there have been some really fundamental paradigm shifts as a result of the activities of the new European Bauhaus. So this is referring back to some of our work in MTF labs, where we were putting humans in the loop with industrial robotics to question the idea of Industry 4.0 automation. You will be aware, if you're following European programs, that has progressed to Industry 5.0 human-centric. But in the new European Bauhaus, we have progressed to more than human ecosystemic approaches that include all species and all ecosystems. And from my experience of 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, when we had industry days, I can tell you that entire week they were talking about ecosystemic approaches. So this placing culture and creativity at the center of decision-making has actually sped up how we understand what paradigms we need to tackle. And of course, it's paramount that industry tackles their challenges in ecosystemic ways if we want a sustainable industry. So this is an example from our labs in Stockholm. These were 90 people in a decommissioned underground nuclear reactor prototyping together in the high-level labs, and maximum inclusion, all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds on a level playing field. And industry has taken really stock of inclusion and wishes to include several categories of people. But in the European Bauhaus, we've introduced this idea of radical inclusion, which doesn't place people into categories, but asks a completely different question at the beginning. And it asks, where do we converge? And we start from there. Here's us in the slush labs, and again, there's Dimitro in the foreground. Now that we think about Ukraine, I see Dimitro in all our photographs. Here we were tracking intellectual property in real time this is 2017. Now this has actually influenced again policy, and particularly in the European Innovation Council marketplace that I'm part of the expert design group on. But and we are implementing some of these ideas. But this is about how do we use technologies for the greater good. And Industry 5.0, of course, is introducing ethics into its discourse about digitalization. But in the European Bauhaus, we have gone one step forward from there, encouraging rediscovery of indigenous technologies. So not just digitalization, but actually not forgetting skills and crafts and traditional skills and regional skills or skills of regional importance. And finally, moonshots are a really, really important part. This is Imogen Heap sending her voice to the moon in our labs in Stockholm from the decommissioned nuclear reactor via the Dwingaloo radio telescope in the north of Holland, with facilitated by artist Martin Nicole Regina. 83 people sent their voices to the moon and back, not because this is a scientific breakthrough, but because it lifts our gaze above ground and it actually reframes the way that we think about ourselves, the way that we think about our challenges. While Industry 5.0 is focusing now on upskilling by training, traditional training in European Bauhaus, we can safely say that the future of work is driven by missions. So I always end on our community, and it's about the people on the ground, about the collaborations. And I always say that if every single person that we involve in these labs that we roll out across the European regions can take one step forward in their personal development as a result of this engagement, then we will have a phenomenal social transformation as a result. So we always say, we don't predict the future, we invent it. Thank you.
Thanks, Michaela, for this very inspiring session and the insights into the new European Bauhaus and the upcoming initiatives around it. I remind every one of you listening to Michaela to use the link in the chat to the Slido question Q&A tool. So if you have any questions to Michaela now is the time to add it to the Slido. There are already 2 questions and I would like to ask them, especially the one from Denisa. She said, amazing talk, thanks a lot, but who should drive the NEP movement on a country level? What stakeholders or change makers are needed to put things into practice? Maybe.
We are not prescriptive. NEB is actually intended as a movement at the grassroots level. So grassroots communities are welcome to take initiative and to start. They don't need to wait for the national governments or regional governments to take action. But also we have a fantastic response from the regional governments. As I mentioned, I was meeting also yesterday with the stakeholders who are aligning to put forward instruments that can scale activities on the ground. So we want to go from the ground up. It is a virtual cycle that is intended by taking best practice from the results on the ground to inform policy missions, and then for policymakers to be able to design better instruments that can further support activities. So it's a virtual cycle, but it can be initiated from the ground up, as we have seen here in many cases where policy has been influenced very strongly. It also provides the kind of evidence-based policy for the regional policymakers that is not based on statistics, but it's based on tangible results, which is why we encourage communities to really engage and submit their ideas.
So when talking about submitting ideas, you also said that there is a prize running at the moment or open at the moment, so you can register or apply for the NEP prize. Where can we find? Can you post the link later into the chat, please?
Yeah,
and how long is it? Is there a deadline?
yeah, the deadline has been extended to the 7th of March. You have 5 days left, and I strongly encourage you to.
So you have to be quick.
So. Yeah, because we want really great projects, and we want great people to be to receive these funds. There last year, the Italians are so incredibly well organized on social media that they basically scooped all the prizes because it was down to public vote. This year, we made sure that there is a jury that ensures that every country is assessed separately and that each country gets prizes. So if you are part of some wonderful projects to do with communities and sustainability. And this is the interesting part, you know, everybody said, well, it's about a Green Deal, it's about sustainability. As soon as we started discussing, as soon as we discuss this with anyone, it is about communities and collaboration first and foremost, and about the social impacts. And you will see that the prizes, it's prizes.European Bauhaus, but I can find them for you right now and I will post them for you.
Okay, thanks. Maybe one question that's kind of interesting. How it was downvoted at the moment, but I will ask it anyway. How do you explain that there are so few applications from the NEP prize from Central Europe, because there are so many good projects there and fast?
Okay, so yeah, no, it's not just Central Europe. There are so many good projects.
General.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's okay. So the situation was, because the Italians and Spanish organized themselves on social media last year, and it was public vote. Basically, they treated it like Eurovision. So they voted all of their projects in, and so everybody else got demoralized. And they didn't want to now apply this year because they thought it was going to be the same situation. So I can actually reassure everyone that great projects will be rewarded. Please go in there.
Okay, so that's for everyone here in the conference. Please apply and add your projects. And one last question, because it's interesting also for me. How will the new European Bauhaus will actually be carried out? So how can someone become part of it? And also maybe a question to add, how is it financed and funded? So what can someone who wants to be part of it get or
yeah. So firstly, when it comes to contributions and decision-making processes, suggestions are very welcome. As I said, there have been hundreds and thousands of projects have been submitted to things that the team should look at, that we should look at. Also, all of the partners are very active, but now we are also opening Friends of NEB for the regional governments and for commercial organizations, because in the first phase, only not-for-profit organizations were accepted, because we didn't want sort of lobbyists to influence the decision-making processes. But of course, as Friends of NEB, they'll be able to engage, all of the commercial organizations can engage, and regional governments. Those will be able to do it. There will be lighthouse projects, which I don't have much information about because they're currently being evaluated and selected. The lighthouse projects, as I say, I can't anticipate outcomes, but there are 5 lighthouses for NEB that will be created as sort of agoras, places where we can collaborate together. But the reason why, for instance, a few of us in the Highlevel roundtable were incredibly concerned that the regions would be left out, and we feel that actually NEB is most powerful in regions where not the big cultural centers, not the usual suspects. We really want all the communities to have a voice, particularly because this initiative allows voices to be heard from the ground up. So this is why we are now on a mission to deliver on that front. Aside from that, if you go to the NEB portal and to the new European Bauhaus.eu, which you will find in the same link that I just posted, if you look at the progress, you will find the latest report, which is called the Nexus report, and this is about the new European Bauhaus synergies with all of the different European programs, and particularly across Horizon, but also other programs. This is why we're working on it as well. And if you look at this now, it's really interesting. We're talking about collaboration between CCI and industry. Cluster 4 industry has got in its destination now new European Bauhaus. And so therefore it's rolled across industrial calls, let alone all of the other calls that are more closely related to perhaps creativity or social impacts, or ICT, which may be sort of the first protocol. Also on that front, we were joined by Commissioner Breton, as well as Commissioners Ferreira and Gabriel, and with the basic meeting with the President a few weeks ago. And he was really supportive of the initiative and is integrated it in several Connect calls. DG Grow are supporting it as well. That NEB is really rolled out, is having a very, very fast uptake. It's wonderful to see, because originally people were saying, well, there's no authority, sounds woolly. We said, well, it's a co-creation process. We didn't want to determine it up front. And so people were a bit skeptical. Now it has been recognized that it's a method of working and co-creating together, and we are working really, we're galvanizing people inside the EC who never would be able to otherwise join forces. We're doing it as NEB, as a kind of a galvanizing force, if you like.
Yes, thanks. I mean, that's very interesting, especially the last few sentences that you said, that it's kind of a bottom-up initiative, let's say. I would describe it within the EU and Europe. So yes, please make sure that you add your projects and apply for the prize, and also your ideas to the new European Bauhaus. Thanks, Michaela. You will stay a little bit longer, so maybe there will be opportunities to discuss and talk to you later. Also, of course, please use the chat or Slido tool also for our next speaker, Yuri Kaplan, who is also talking about co-creation and also speculative innovation. Welcome, Yuri. You are artistic director of the Kersnikova Institute in Ljubljana, and you were leading the establishment of the Lab for Speculative Innovation. And you are an expert in involving art thinking and design thinking into the innovation process, facilitated by the so-called innovation catalysts. And you titled your slides in your presentation, Mastery of Weaving Ideas, and will share a little bit of your experiences and expertise in all these processes, and you will contribute to the question, how might we engage people in projects, and how do you use the know-how of and experience of these diverse groups that are co-creating and working together. And I really welcome you, Yuri, and please share your screen and tell us more about weaving ideas, please.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Wolfgang, for the introduction. I prepared some slides to follow my explanation of how we at Kersnikova Institute are trying to somehow address this challenge of bringing creatives and especially artists in the battlefield of the innovation. I was trained as an architect, and at the beginning I was exhibiting my speculative architectures around in galleries, and this is how I met artwork. And somehow I became a curator, and I'm curating the program of contemporary investigative arts in Kapelica Gallery and at Kersnikova Institute since '95. So it's more than 25 years of showing, presenting, and producing challenging artworks that are following, thematizing, and sometimes even problematizing the connections of humans and machines. So the entry point of how the artist can come onto the field of innovation is that they are bringing a new way of seeing things, a different, unexpected, and sometimes unorthodox approach of seeing things. And here I'm using this quote, that it's not really a quote, it's more an adaptation of a quote, but it still serves its purpose because it's very true. And this is sometimes the entry point also when we are approaching different kind of industries and also other players from the real sector. So we are talking about the innovation here, but we have to understand what is the difference between invention and innovation and what comes in between. So usually when we come in the situation of being invited, or when we invite ourselves into onto a collaboration with a company or with the community, we usually encounter a very I would say spontaneous approach to innovation. And usually innovation teams are compiled by the owner, if we are lucky, and mostly they are engineers and technicians, and maybe sometimes also a person from marketing comes, not very often also a member of a family that is a kind of early adopters or the first people who can see it and who can envision it, how the future innovation will look like. But then we are trying to persuade them that there needs to be created a place for other people as well, to other creatives, to other point of approaches. So we are usually showing this Krebs chart of creativity that was made by Neri Oxman from MIT, and which we somehow iterated it to show how artists and designers can be positioned in relation to engineers that are representing the technological part, and even a scientist, and what is the benefit of bringing these people together. So once, if we succeed to persuade them to adopt this enlargement of the innovators, we have another challenge, and this is how to explain what artists can really bring here. And I have to underline that there is a big difference between art making and art thinking. And what is actually happening when the artists are making their artwork, and what is happening, or what are the assets we need to have in order to understand what the artists are doing, how they are doing things, how they are approaching things, and what is the level of cognition that we need to unleash in order to understand what the artists are saying. And when we are talking about the artists, we are not talking about the painters or sculptors or theater players or so on, but mostly the artists that are thematizing various aspects of cohabitation between humans and machines, humans and different kind of technologies, being robotics, telecommunications, all these digital bodies. Lately, we are focusing very much on biotechnologies and how we should understand the connection of humans with other living beings. So how to go beyond this and so anthropocentric understanding of the world we're living in. So once we persuade them to bring the artist behind the table, we are trying to explain what it's needed to connect these two challenges that we have in front of us. How to think invention that it's usually coming from the scientific investigation for the basic sciences, and how we can interpret these basic elements, these building blocks into something new. And this is where the art thinking is coming as a most valuable asset, because being able to abstract things, it's being able to go out from this biased and enclosed bubble that it's usually coming from the company that it's doing I know their products, and they know everything about it. They know the materials, they know the methodologies, they know their tools, they know their customers. So their approach is enclosed in this very particular deep knowledge, and we are trying to bring them out from this biased knowledge, and to bring them to be able to bring them out, we have to bring a different way of thinking. And abstraction is something that it's very difficult to employ once you have so different professionals behind the table. So in order to mitigate all these people, all these professionals, all these different knowledge that is in the room, we invented a person that we call it innovation catalyst, which is a person that should know how the artists are thinking, how designers are thinking, how engineers are approaching to problem solving, what is the usual expectations when we are talking to somebody that is a product developer or a service developer, or simply a community that needs a social innovation. That kind of person, it's actually this kind of professional. It's actually something we have to invent. And during one European project called Master Model in Art and Technology, as an outcome, we developed a prototype of a curriculum how to teach this kind of people to understand all these approaches and how to translate between these different languages. And we came up so far with this. And here we can see a tree chart of how the
sorry to interrupt you. We still see your first slide, so it doesn't move on our screens. So I was not sure if this is on purpose or there is something not working. No, because now you talk of the tree graphic, but we don't see it. So maybe sorry to interrupt you. Maybe you start the screen sharing again and jump to the slides. And now, yes, now it works.
Well, this is how it went. Maybe you can read it here now, but that's really strange why it didn't move.
Okay.
So, well, I still have 10 minutes and maybe I can speed up, but yes, and the difference between art thinking with art making and art thinking, and this is the artistic, how the art works. We are dealing with are usually looking like, so these are not paintings and like traditional form of art, but the artworks where the artists are very much informed about the technology they're using, being telecommunications, robotics, coding, biotechnologists, and recently also quantum biology and so coming back to this dichotomy between invention and innovation, this is where the abstractions come in that we're bringing with the artist and art thinking. This is actually the second name for the art thinking. Not entirely, because as we know, artists are not only thinking when they're doing their artworks, of course not. There is very much about the experience and as Marshall McLuhan said already in the 70s, we do experience much more than we understand. So it's the experience that it's very important here, and this is what the artists are bringing in when collaborating in these environments. So here is the Innovation Catalyst program and how the process of innovation it's running in the so-called challenge room or challenge lab that we are building it right now. Actually, we built it already, and right now we are developing an additional dialogue partner, which is a set of AI algorithms. So beside artists, designers, researchers, engineers, we have also integrated a cluster of AI algorithms that are totally visceral and without any ethical constraints, because when we are talking about the innovation, then we have to go like full Monty into it. This is how our challenge lab actually looks like. And this is a situation where we are trying to bring all the stakeholders that are included into the innovation team, and we're trying them to unfold them, to open them, to create a safe environment where they can really lose themselves free. Because we strongly believe, and this is also what proves us right, that you cannot order an innovation. You cannot, there is no button you can press and the innovation will come up. The only thing what you can do is you can create an environment and proper conditions where the innovations can stem up. And this is what we're doing. And this is extremely difficult when we're bringing people from the real sector, from the real world. because they are always in hurry. They are always limited by their deadlines. They are constantly reminding us that at the end of the month they have to come up with salaries and so on. And right now we are here to actually build this innovation culture, which is not very present in our social environment. So we are trying to persuade people to bring them in and to make them learn how to delve into an imaginary world that we are creating, so that we can really talk about the innovation. And it's very difficult for them to foresee the radical innovation, because they are so limited in their expectations. But we are encouraging them that this radical foresight, it's something that they can inform them for the decisions that they can make tomorrow. So if they agree that that there is a goal in 10, maybe even 20 years that they would like to reach, they can, this information is informing them to start adopting decisions tomorrow already, so that they are slowly going to that direction. And deliberately, the innovations are very often not totally palpable. No, they are more conceptual, but still as an information that is informing their behavior, their future developments, it's crucial. We are always in the part of the prototyping, and also testing different prototypes, or connecting them to the other possible products in the market. It's something that it's very easily can be made by their engineers alone, because they know how to make things. But colliding really foresight ideas, this is what it's difficult. So our challenge with this reality here, where we are having a bottom-up push from the creative sector to persuade the actors in the real sector that they should innovate. And on the other side, we have the policymakers from the European Commission that are encouraging everyone, to really start with radical innovation. Now we have to fill the space in between. And in order to fill this space in between, we started investing into new generations. So into a rather large project that it's funded by European cohesion policy. Now it's a 4-year project. We are actually creating a network all over the country, where we have the whole system of workshops for kids, youngsters, and also adults, where we are sensibilizing them to these kind of questions through unbiased technologies, to empower them to use them freely and creatively. Then we are settling few topical laboratories across the country, where we are enabling artists for almost ideal way of doing their and developing their artworks, and pushing them really over the limit, so that they can inspire everyone, either those who are doing who are making the workshops, developing and executing the workshops, and even those in our challenge lab that it's called Praxa, where we are trying to bring all this new way of thinking, supervisionary, sometimes even utopistic, but still informed with our experiences in dealing with these radical new technologies and upcoming technologies that artists are very keen to use. So we structured our activities on 3 levels that are already showing first results. However, you cannot change your environment in the time of one European project, I would say in 3 or 4 years. We embarked on a journey, and we envision our first really palpable results in next 5 to 8 years. So this is what we are doing right now, and hopefully we'll manage to achieve our goals and our visions. Thank you.
Thanks, Yuri, for your presentation and the insights. So there is already 1 or 2 questions for you, and I invite you again to add your questions also to Slido, but I also read the one in the chat. So the question here is from Monica: how participation in sustainable development trend can generate value for both producers and end users?
Well, this is rather a rhetorical question, no? Because we are all striving to, whatever we do, have to be sustainable. This is what we learned. No? Unfortunately, sustainability is not something that it's very present in the menu of the companies we are collaborating with. No, they're really short-sighted, and bringing this on the table, these questions on the table, is sometimes accepted as too visionary, too utopistic, not really adoptable for them. But this is where we are coming in with our foresight, and we are trying to show how in the future this will be beneficial. Sustainability is beneficial for them, and for them it's very difficult to understand that they have to do it not because it's beneficial only for them, but for everyone else as well. So this responsibility, it's something that it's very difficult to achieve, and to persuade engineers and owners and even communities that are inviting us to solve a concrete problem. But almost every time when we encounter for the first time, we see that the problem they envision, it's not the real problem, that we have to rethink their starting point. No? So this is already when we encounter the first mitigation situation, where innovation catalyst has to settle down a little bit nerves and expectations.
Exactly, these expectations, is exactly what we also learned in our COCO4CCI project, and the collaborations between creatives and manufacturing industries. So there is different expectations and very limited time, but still we have to kind of find our workarounds, how to combine those groups. So as I understood that your innovation catalyst is, you act, or as innovation catalysts, you act as kind of translators between the groups. Is that correct? So you're trying to facilitate this process a little bit and push them beyond the borders, let's say, or yeah.
Yeah, well, the first, our first need, urge to bring somebody else together with the artist when we are going to the company is that usually when the artists are going there, you know, they are perceived like totally biased, you know, like the artists are somebody who is non-reliable, a little bit strange, does not understand how the real work is doing. Most of them are parasites being publicly funded and so on. So, and you know, there is one artist and 5 engineers on the other side of the desk, and they are eating them in first 15 minutes. No, so there is nothing between this mutual understanding and what even collaboration. But when an innovation catalyst comes in, and I was several times in a role of innovation catalyst, a kind of prototype of it, I was able to defend this way of thinking and this way of doing things. So the whole process was totally different. And now mitigating these ego dynamics behind the table proved to be efficient, involving algorithms of artificial intelligence that is constantly providing us hints, even jokes, some pastiche of images that we've been bringing from all sides, and one in a sudden, it's humans against the machine. And that helps very much in mediating these egos that are coming from this situated knowledge that everyone is so proud of when coming into the challenge room. But our efforts to somehow make them forget who they are, what makes them experts, it's super crucial when we try to work together.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So it's all about explaining a little bit in depth the value of creative and cultural and artistic work and how it can, yeah.
Well, I wrote in the title already that you have to create a special chemistry. If you fail to create this atmosphere of understanding, of accepting others, you will fail during the process. No? And since they are coming for a very short time, this is super difficult to achieve. And because the innovation process should last for days. No? You cannot just make a hackathon and come up with some schnapps ideas.
Exactly. And so thanks, Yuri. Thanks for the talk, for the insights. You are still here to answer maybe questions also in the chat or also afterwards. I think everyone needs a short break, a bio break or coffee break, or I don't know if someone still smokes, then also a cigarette break. I'm looking to my colleague here, yeah. And let's meet in latest 10 minutes, so at around 11 here again to continue our talks and sessions with Agnes. And until then, have a nice time and see you soon, hopefully every one of you. Bye. On point, we are all back. And I hope everyone else is back, not only the 5 people that I see on my screen, but I can see that there's also a few others there, hopefully. And and also in the chat, there is signals that people are still there and participants are still there and watching and listening to the very inspiring talks that we already had and we will have. Next up, and again, maybe the recording is on, so we are recording also the next sessions, and if you have questions, please ask via chat or Slido, and also fill out and use our Padlet to introduce yourself. And I'd like to introduce now Agnes from Poland, and she's a speculative designer, design curator, and educator in design, also founder of Transport and co-founder of Touching Point Studio, which was established to transfer ideas between different sectors and implementing them into strategic actions. And yes, she will have a talk now and will contribute a little bit to the question, how might we design inclusive and open rooms and spaces? So please, Agnes, it's your turn now. Welcome.
Thank you, Wolfgang, for the warm welcome. Hello, everyone. I will share my deck. So give me a moment. Let me know if it's all visible.
Perfect.
Perfect. So I would like also to add a bit to my experience, because the important part of my professional experience is actually being an educator. On a daily basis, I'm running a speculative design and subversive design studio at Szczecin Art Academy. I would like to share with you today my personal and professional journey of designing spaces, actually not only physical ones. First of all, when I received the guiding question from Wolfgang, how might we design inclusive and open rooms and spaces? I asked myself the question first, what is space actually? In a physical realm, a building that's somehow magically becoming a creative incubator, or is it actually a well-managed energy cycle? I believe it is, that resides in a physical realm, that makes it feel good to create in it. And I would also like to refer, as you read it before me, to Neri Oxman's Krebs cycle of creativity, because that question I asked myself reminded me of the cycle, which shows how the holistic interrelation between different domains or different peers, e.g. industry, young creatives, students, scientists, actually works. One realm inside the revolution or the evolution inside another and affect each other. So to sum up, in order to create a situation which is, I believe, a collaborative one, I believe we need to build a system where a single individual or project can have potential to become a valuable input to each other. So today I would like to share with you my experience, my personal experience with situation and use tools that truly help me welcoming creative minds to innovate, which apparently happens in these in-between moments where ideas, as in Oxman's creative cycle, can easily flow between people from different backgrounds or between different realms. And here I would like to ask you the question, when was the last in-between moments where the magic happened, where creative idea bubbled in a discussion, ready to permeate the larger group and having a potential of getting bigger? Mine was exactly in between main dish and dessert, when I had a sip of great and tasty wine and a great discussion arose because the group I was with felt at ease, and we experienced the situation not only in the intellectual or mental way, so we didn't stay in our heads, but we also experienced it essentially. All our bodies were engaged, and this is in my personal opinion, the magic spot. We know from sensorial design very well, but unfortunately, it's not a common knowledge in building spaces. And the last post of Matylda Krzykowski, hopefully well known, Berlin-based designer and design curator, commenting on Dubai Expo, like a few weeks ago, I believe, reminded me of that in order to build a creative cycle, we need actually few ingredients. And the main of them is common language and experience on a human scale, which allows us to enter the situation, evolve in it, and generate ideas, not only observe it without. Matylda's remarks resonated with me and reminded me that when I firstly faced in my personal and professional journey, that kind of creative ecosystem based on common language of different peers that happen on human scale. Exactly. Back in 2020, right before COVID pandemic hit, I had a enormous pleasure, I still remember that time, to go trekking in ants in Peru. And one of my destinations, maybe known for people loving design and food romances, was a complex of restaurants located in Lima in Peru. They were called Central, Coy and Mayo, established by Michelin star chef Virgilio Martinez and his wife Pia. And the heart of this amazing food experience sanctuary, Mater Initiativa, which I realized that was a real local creative cluster on site. Mater Initiativa is an interdisciplinary organization that aims to articulate knowledge through research, interpretation, and cultural expressions. It's situated in Ants with a proximity to Morai ruins in Can terraces that team translate hypothetically ceremonial center that is on site to an agricultural laboratory, a result of collaboration of local communities with hundreds, even if not thousands of local artists, collectors, producers working on that amazing place on a very high altitude. On site, I became familiar with a variety of native plants used for nutritional and medicinal purposes, and to see the alchemical process producing innovation-based food supply dedicated not only for five-star restaurants, but also for locals that are part of that amazing ecosystem. And last but not least, the gastronomic experience on site in that food sanctuary. Which I believe it is, that goes beyond expectation, because it's not just a dish or a final destination, but a real life experience on the local experiments that leaves you inspired, as it actually did to me. So much that I decided to instill that kind of approach in my professional experience as a speculative designer and design curator. I asked myself, coming back from there, why did it work? Why did it grow organically without a big initial funding and became one of the main drivers of developing the Ants Mountains area? And it actually was a human scale. The project was relevant and personal for locals, as well it was relevant and inspiring for visitors. It didn't grow with a complicated methodology, but with a genuine passion and local potentials. All the elements were added naturally and not designed to match perfectly. And this is my magic spot. In that imperfection, ideas can ferment and grow, and it built a genuine creative cycles which thrive even in that geographically demanding space on a high altitude. I can sum up Virgilio Martinez cluster, who was a founder of this enormous initiative, as a perfect execution of Tim Ingold, British anthropologist's words, that we have enough of theory and practice, and it's time for thinking and doing. The enormous potential residing in these words we decided to test with my friends and co-workers from Szczecin Academy of Art, with whom I also work on a daily basis on projects within the speculative design and foresight. And this is how the idea of our first design experience exhibition of our design faculty happened. Our principal aim was to defestivalize design exhibition and to open the research process so it can expand and not only be valuable for co-creators, but also for people outside the design bubble at Łódź Design Festival. Follow the objects, because that was the title of our process. It's an ethnographic research method that allows us to look at human behavior resulting from the usage of various objects. So we decided actually to follow selected phenomena and objects, and by analyzing them, take a closer look at the contemporary world. The selected object became a symbol of material culture and at the same time discussion about the future. So we work on the exhibition in some kind of a summer mode, summer school mode during the peak of pandemic last year, and not only our initial meeting, and actually our initial meeting only was in real life. So how did we succeed? With Agata Kiedrowicz, my co-curator, and Magda Małachowska, who is today with us, here with us, I believe, we decided that the process will be a co-creative one between lecturers, so design studio owners at our academy, where every person and students. So basically, every person enters the team on the same level with a different experience, different perspective, different skill set, and everyone is actually valuable. When I'm thinking about the process we started, I can't help myself but think of it as a river. River as a metaphor of the process, where we with Agata were building shores of the main river, so the groups and its tributaries, external consultants and knowledge that added to the process. It actually was a constant flow or a constant stream. The result of work of these 8 teams, consisting of around 3 to 4 people each, were processes. We really focus on the process. With Agata, we work as external consultants. We were asking questions, creating dialogues to make it possible to squeeze actually this creative research process and MVP building in 2 months. Every team was working remotely apart from other groups, so in different places and modes of work, at the academy, in the workshop, but also outside town, as you can see on these photos, depending on the projects and personal needs. It was holiday. During this 2-month period, we met a few times in person and virtually to cross-analyze the progress within different teams and make it possible to exchange remarks. We've been working actually as a decentralized tribe. The main challenge for us after that process was to find a way to share that interdisciplinary process and open it to Łódź Design Festival guests and get the feedback on site. So our main aim was to invite people to the creative process, to create the atmosphere that will be welcoming for all types of guests. I mean, design enthusiasts, retired people, as well as primary school students, each of them as a possible tester and a feedback giver to us. Olga Kiedrowicz-Świtalska and Teresa Otulak, who designed the scenography idea and executed it in place, underlined these 2 principles that help them to create a really welcoming space. They asked themselves the question how to make the process comprehensible and how to avoid the trap of things being pretty, very often the case within design, and how to underline the role of the process actually. Girls came up with a simple, yet I think very brilliant idea of an open studio formula. The private situation on a daily basis, a private workspace, becomes actually a public, but yet intimate one. The idea so close to the principles of Peruvian Matter Initiative cluster, I believe. The human scale and the aspect of personal relevance, the genuine share of process ups and downs, not designer exhibition, but actually a curated space where intimacy helps to build relations between us and between guests. Our exhibition slogan became "Come and sit with us" in our designer studio, which was arranged and built by the team of students and lecturers by their own hands in our own workshop at the academy. So it was all our work from A to Z. What was the core pillar of the concept? Actually, people. Students were main players, welcoming people as in restaurants and presenting their work in 8 connected stands when one research area was interrelated with another. Threats and research areas was intertwined, so it was very comprehensible for guests. Olga and Teresa focused on interaction, the one that guests had with objects and processes, but also with students. The simple idea with a table and chairs or space arranged on the floor where you could sit together and just simply talk. One of the effects of these amazing 4 days, because that was a duration of Multi-Design Festival last year, of that constant feedback, very often from people representative of sectors that could be potentially interested in developing our team's proposals, as well as potential recipients of our proposals. The open and honest research dealing with difficult and actually sometimes even uncomfortable topics resulted in deepened feedback and became an igniting spark of a possible startup. And it actually happened. One of the developed project was Moja. Magda Małachowska, who is today with us, is one of our academy lecturers and the team member and the mentor. That project is dedicated to prevention of intimate women's health in a form of vaginal microlaboratory integrated with a mobile application. The objects resembling a silicone tampon allows the monitoring of basic parameters important for further diagnostics. After our exhibition, the project actually started in December 2021, the incubation process at the Unicorn Hub in Lublin, in Poland, with the second position out of 300 applicants. The team established a company and is now building an actual business model. So to sum up, so how might we design inclusive and open room and spaces, or maybe how can we build how can we build creative cycles that ignite innovations? From my experience, I think it is important to build a situation that will empower people in given environments, especially when we are working in decentralized tribes, as I said before. Culture and the approach to work actually transcends locations. Move from theory and practice to thinking and doing. Learn as you go, but first build the idea that can actually tackle challenges on a personal level. Environmental philosopher Glenn Albrecht claims that we are on the verge of moving from Anthropocene to Symbiocene. So that the symbiosis, companionship and cooperation. So I think that my advice that I can share with you, and also my note to self, is to let's act like a tribe, which is now even more important than ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnes. Are there any questions from the participants to Agnes? Otherwise, I would have one. So please write it in the chat or in the Slido. So Agnes, in your daily work, how do you approach the different groups you're working with as a speculative designer or as a university member or as a founder, and how do you bring them together, and how do you explain them these rooms or these spaces, and how do you find out what they need, what they are expecting, what kind of environments,
Actually, I think it's very important to connect on an emotional level. We usually, especially in scientific domain, we are used to ask logical questions and we are expecting logical replies. And actually, it's not the case. Let's see the Ukraine situation now. It's not logical at all. But we have to tackle that. And I think that in my personal professional practice, what I do is actually I tap emotionally into the room, and I see and I try to see what are the expectations and with what are people actually coming. And when we can distill that idea, then we can tackle it with that logical approach. So take the tools that can resolve maybe the situation, but I believe that we cannot start a creative process only with a logical methodology and logical tools. It just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. There is a question from the chat. Does space influence the type of results that are developed?
Of course, everything. I think it's the basis of quantum theory that everything actually has the influence. So of course, but we have to remember that when we are working now in decentralized tribes, so the space is only this emotional space we are building here, not only the physical one. And I think it's very important to remember that.
How do you facilitate these emotional spaces? I mean, that could be sometimes could be hard.
I'm just open and I'm not judging because we are coming with different approach. Sometimes even with different traumas, and it's very difficult to work on creative projects with a trauma. So I think that's the most important thing, just to be open, not to judge, and be open for everything that comes in the creative process, even if it doesn't make sense at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, Agnes, if there is no question at the moment here in the chat, then I would like to thank you for your input and your insights, and we would continue with our next program point or agenda point, which would be a first round of networking session. There will be breakout rooms now for one for Agnes, one with Yuri, one open room everyone can join, and there is also one with Michaela with some already invited people. It's not in that case it's not hidden, but there is discussions going on with Michaela also. And I would say, as we are running a little bit late, and we started a little bit or it took a little bit more time in the first part of the conference, we use 15 minutes for this networking part, and like not 20 but 15, and we'll be back on 11:40 for the talk with Rafaela and then Arthur. And in these 15 minutes, you can discuss everything and connect with the speakers and talk and discuss also private matters, whatever you want. But I would invite you to join now the breakout rooms that you find in a few seconds, and see you soon here in the big room. Have fun and enjoy. So hi, welcome back. I hope most of you are back from the breakout sessions. Maybe some are still in the rooms, but I hope they are coming back soon. And we would continue with our next session with Rafaela Seitz from Hamburg Cross Innovation Hub, Hamburg Kreativ. Welcome, Rafaela.
Thank you very much.
And yeah, you dedicate yourself to the conception and the organization of cross-sector offers in the Cross Innovation Hub at Hamburg Kreativ, and you will tell us a little bit about your work there in the hub and how you maybe, or how we can turn maybe experiments and these prototyping and so on to hopefully sustainable concepts and models. And yeah, I hope you introduce yourself a little bit more and tell us more about your work and the outcomes, or even the impact that you create at the Cross Innovation Hub. So thanks, Rafaela. It's your turn now.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang. I'm very glad to be here, and it's been very inspiring to hear all the previous speakers and to learn more about the COCO4CCI. Yeah, my name is Rafaela Seitz. I work for the Cross Innovation Hub, which is a project by Hamburg Kreativgesellschaft, and I co-lead this project. And beforehand, before I started co-leading the project, I was in the field of just conception and organization. But to contextualize it a bit more, Hamburg Kreativgesellschaft is a public agency owned by the city of Hamburg. We support agents from the creative industries in all those different sub-markets as listed here, so from architecture to advertising in the fields of space, financing, knowledge, and innovation. And this project, Cross Innovation Hub, has its turf in the innovation field. It's a learning project and a platform to explore and open up new innovation potentials in the collaboration with creatives and agents from other industries, from the business sector, as well as the public sector. What's like the premise by all of our formats of how we are approaching cross innovation is that the collaboration always takes place on eye level. In every project that we conduct as Cross Innovation Hub, we try to make sure that this is given, and so it's always about how we organize and shape this collaboration, but it's also always about solutions in the end. Right, so we're not concentrating our work on one specific kind of innovation. So we're approaching product innovation, process innovation, service innovation, as well as business model innovation. And are also working in the fields of transformative plans when it comes to digitization or work culture. And we started with this project of Cross Innovation Hub in 2016. Yes, it's partly co-financed by the European Development Regional Fund. So what does that mean for us as a public intermediary? We try to build or regard ourselves as sort of bridge builders, translators, organizers of such spaces of cross innovation, where we try to make sure that those are spaces of trust and psychological safety, and try to bear in mind what we call success factors for cross innovation. So factors that we learned are crucial so that people really can effectively work with each other, result open, but yet solution oriented on that eye level. And those are factors as facilitation, space, topic, legal frameworks, financial conditions, the constellation of participants and partners, just to mention a few. So what we do in the hub is that we conduct different programs, like it can be events, just like one-day workshops, but it can also be labs that last for several months. So in this first period of EU promotion, we started also with this thesis that creatives are innovation catalysts, as just mentioned beforehand, also because we also deeply believe that they're very good at changing perspective, that they're highly flexible and adaptive to context, needs and changes, they naturally move in networks and naturally move along different disciplines. So they are open to transdisciplinary work. They show a high fluidity of ideas, are original in what they create, are very sensitive for problems, and are actually capable to also redefine challenges that are given so that it matches the potentials that they can contribute throughout a process, and that they have this visionary striving so that can really imagine spaces that others may not be able to imagine. And in all those creative processes, they're always like result open, but yet solution oriented. So this is where we are also like orienting ourselves towards, to make sure that we raise potentials in the best possible ways, and at the same time making sure that companies, because we have co-financing partners, trust the process and open up for such collaboration. So this is like just the key visual of one of our formats, which is called the Cross Innovation Lab. The last Cross Innovation Lab, which took, or the last bigger Cross Innovation Lab took place from February to June last year. In this lab, 22 companies participated from very different industries like logistics, aviation, finance, building and construction, as well as mobility. It were companies like Deal Aviation or Implenia, or also a public institution like the Authorities for Traffic and Mobility Turnaround. There were in total 7 challenges in this focus on climate. So all those 7 challenges were about how to make operations, products, processes greener. There were 27 creatives involved from very different sub-markets, so from different fields of design, so speculative design, product design, industry design, and communication design, for instance, as well as journalists, artists, etc., and 3 tools. So every challenge was accompanied by at least 2 creatives, 1 creative with competencies that we thought were sort of very close to the challenge. So if we're talking about, you know, like a building concept, it's sort of, it makes sense to include an architect, but it may not make sense at first sight to include someone from the theater field, but from our point, kind of it does. So we consciously increase also multi-perspectivity and so on. So those were creatives involved. There could also be creatives involved as facilitators of the process, or other creatives that have specific competencies that we're not giving in the team yet. Then we also had scientists involved from very different disciplines like biology, economies, and informatics, that were climate related in their research. So how did the process look like? This is like the process that we followed through. So we had those 7 teams with plans, and then all 7 teams, all the creatives met each other so they could really get to know each other. Then there was a period of field research where it was all about the creatives really understanding the context better of the teams. So to really sense for a reasonable challenge that they also find attractive as creatives with the backgrounds that they bring into. So before the ideation, the teams were all set up to go into that process of ideation, developing many idea routes. Then all the teams came together again in open innovation setting to present each other what they developed, and then the teams themselves made the decision which solution route they want to follow up on. So to go on that track on realization and create a solution in the end. And then we did partner in this last bigger lab round with the Hamburgische Investitionsförderbank, so a bank, but also other partners that could help us with the scientists, for instance. And as we are a learning project, of course, it was all about evaluation also. So just to take up that question of Wolfgang, so how do we turn experiments into sustainable concepts models? Just one case out of the climate lab. We had Rhenus Logistics as one company participating in this lab, and it's a logistics service provider with approximately 35,000 employees, and it operates worldwide. And what they did is that they went into this lab process with a new team, an international team, which is called Green Warehousing Team. There, and their aim is to meet the European Green Deal from company side, and they were very open. Their plans were not clear at all. So what they appreciated about the lab was the open approach, and to sort of think in every possible direction. And what their task is to make warehouses greener, but how to do that, they didn't really know. So who are the creatives that joined this lab? It was Niels, a journalist, Marie-Pascale, an illustrator in the sustainability context, and Claudia, design manager and user experience designer. So they did sort of all of this field research within Rhenus Logistics, the creatives, and they came up with the how might we challenge, how might we make warehouse knowledge and data accessible in order to motivate employees and managers and give them incentives to implement solutions for CO2 reduction, thinking about visualization and gamification. So this how might we question came up after they did this field research, and sort of bit simplified, their main insights from this field research were, okay, there is not one fits it all solution. The warehouses Rhenus Logistics has are very different. Some are owned, others are rented, and the rented warehouse are not capable and willing to invest too much into sustainability means. Another insight was that there's already a lot of knowledge internally given, but it's not being used by other warehouses. So how to actually share and motivate people to learn more about the best cases that are already given, because there's like in Tilburg, there's like this best case warehouse already there. Interestingly, in this period of field research, the creatives could ask any question that came up to their minds. So what they also tested was, how radical can we actually be? I mean, like, can we talk about business models as well? Or what can we actually talk about? So they tried to sort of also stretch the space for solutions. They tried to identify where the major levers are for CO2 reduction when not being able to like go for a radical solution. So that was very interesting also to see and to observe, so that they really had like the space of eye-level collaboration taking place and trying to just stretch everything. So they identified two main users. In this warehouse context, it's Pavel, like a warehouse manager for whom sustainability is important, but yes, cost effectivity weighs a lot more. And Dominic, who's a technical director, and for him, for this persona, reducing energy usage is like the major goal. What we also found out in the field research is that it's like a very competitive climate in the company. So So what the creatives developed was like an online portal to reduce CO2 consumption. So what you can see here is a map where you can see with all those little icons the different sides of Rhenus Logistics. And there is a color coding, so you can see like the overall sustainability performance, one being like very good in sustainability, different sustainability aspects to the gray down there, the 5 where it's not good at all. So like with this competitive competition filter, you can see where every site is, which ranking position every site has. Then you can dive deeper into those sites, learn more about where, in which categories that site is very good, what building wise is sustainable already, and you can sort of test, okay, if I turn 50% to solar energy, what does that make with my overall performance and all of that. So like making all the knowledge that is already given in the company intuitively present. What the creatives also involved was a set of medals, because they were also like, yeah, they strongly believe in collaboration and innovation culture. So accepting that there is like this very, well, realistically KPI driven company culture, they try to trigger with gaming, for instance, collaboration. So let's think about Pavel, you know, from Madrid, seeing, okay, well, this site is not performing very good when it comes to sustainability categories, but I do see that Dominic can help me from Barcelona, so I'm going to contact him, and Dominic can actually win a medal in collaboration wise. Then they thought also about like how like sites could also win those medals. So to not only think about single agents, but to think about big teams also. So that's like a concept that they created. And the beautiful thing about it is, though it's not a radical innovation, it's really sort of a concept that can really majorly diminish CO2 reduction, and it can be implemented in a business service, business analysis service that Rhenus Logistic already has. So it's a solution within their system. They could not implement it yet, though they will be doing it. And this is just, or that was just one example of, an exemplary case, but there are many cases more, like from the same climate lab, had an aviation team, and they developed a concept for a recyclable cabin. We in another lab, we developed, or the creators developed, Entile augmented reality prototype. In another lab, there was like a product ecosystem being developed around the topic of cluing. This picture with Find is about a concept for a platform where companies that have spaces that they can actually temporarily give to creatives can just match with each other. And here you see like a picture of about a lab which took place with students, so not visionary professionals as in this lab that I just introduced, but with students from very many disciplines. And they, for example, developed a blind person's cane that will be realized. Yes. So throughout the years, from the end of 2016, we worked together with very different partners. It's, I think, 159 partners. So it's not about marketing, but it's just to show we are very proud when it comes to those partners from the business and public sector. And there is not a specific industry that we concentrated on, and there's also not a specific topic that we concentrated on. Yep, thank you very much. And yeah, I'm already looking forward to going into a breakout room with you later. And of course, I'm open for any question.
Thank you, Rafaela. Very interesting. Yeah, I invite you again to ask the questions to Rafaela, either now in the chat or on Slido, or in a few minutes after Arthur's talk in the breakout session. I have one question for you. Like, I already put it into the Slido. How deep does the commitment from the companies, from the industry companies, need to go before they enter your labs or work together with creatives and other sectors? Because as our learnings were in the last months and years in our COCO4CCI project, it very much depends on how deep this commitment goes, because and who is involved in the company. Is it someone? Is it like a CEO and a manager position, or someone, let's say, a little bit more below? Because at the end, someone needs to say, okay, let's do it, from prototype to actual service or whatever, and we have to finance it and we have to continue and so on. So do you have these, I don't know, do you ask this before, or is it simply experimenting and then get one step further?
Yeah, I'll totally see the challenges that you already sketched, because of course, like everything being developed, and as we have like that focus on the early period of innovation, right? So there is always that stretch that we need to try to make towards implementation, towards realization. So the commitment that we need is sort of materialized in a contract, right? And we try to, like in all those, when we're trying to get partners on board, we're trying to make clear that there is like so much potential behind, and we're trying to scan who would internally make sense to involve in this process, and trying to think about at what point of the process is it important to include whom. So it's pretty much like when it comes to small and medium-sized companies that we haven't worked. I mean, or we have we should even try to work more with them, right? It can also, or it can be like the CEOs, right? Mm-hmm. But when it comes to like bigger companies, it's innovation managers, it's marketing people, so it's sort of rather middle management. But as we have always in this lab a public opening moment and a public closing moment, at least that's where we try to also include like people from higher position, sort of. And we see ourselves like as sparring partners and partners in crime throughout. So we always try through communication to make sure that that the projects do not eject, at that point of public closing and presentation of the solutions that were being developed. But it's sort of course, I mean, like, yeah, it's a learning process.
So I mean, when you say you write a contract, or you make a contract, then what happens if the expectations go into wrong direction, or the actions or the implementation goes into a wrong direction, and someone says either it is the creative or the company or you as a facilitator and say, okay, this is not working anymore. How do you proceed then? I mean, this is also challenging, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. I mean, like in this Cross Innovation Lab, we have reflection talks throughout, where we are and like a moderator is talking to the leads of the companies so that we know and can sense where they actually stand, and that we can also learn whether we need to, you know, sort of correct some aspects or to make sure that they're staying on board. We didn't have such an experience yet, right?
Okay.
Like I think like as you also said, this whole expectation management is key.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also like learning and learning and learning, but it has never come to this point of, ooh, the expectations are not met, and we want to, we're so dissatisfied that we need to earlier end the collaboration.
Okay, I see. So yeah, I guess that there's a lot to talk about with you, and also in the breakout session later. So thanks, Rafaela, for your insights. And yes, you stay a little bit here, of course, for the last talk and also the breakout session. And thanks for the input. And I would like to welcome now Arthur Mamou-Mani. Last but not least, so to say that our last speaker for today, architect and director from the award-winning studio Mamou-Mani Architects, and he's specializing in new kind of digitally designed and fabricated architecture. Is also lecturer at the University of Westminster and owns a digital fabrication laboratory called the FabPub. Which also allows people to experiment with large 3D printers and laser cutters, which is also kind of the things that we were dealing with throughout our COCO4CCI project, at least in some of our partner countries and projects. And yeah, in his talk, he tries to answer a little bit the question, how might we improve the quality of our living or working experience, and what interesting trends in materials and technology we could follow here, and what are the approaches here, the concepts. So warm welcome, Arthur, and please show us some of your projects and share your screen with us.
Brilliant. So let me do that now, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you very much. Let me see if I can share the right screen, number one. And you please let me know if you can see everything well.
Perfect.
Is everything okay?
Yes.
Brilliant, brilliant. So I know I have 20 minutes, so I'll start my countdown. I'll do my best. And I look forward to our breakout session after. So really, from your introduction is really accurate. We have two practices. One is about design, one is about fabrication. And I thought it was important that both be united or done in parallel, because I think architects might have a tendency to design in abstraction from materiality or from the contracting or from the actual objects that come out. And I think our goal is to reconnect things and create a more holistic architecture that work in relation to the circular economy. So looping it back. So this is about future living, future working, future shopping, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll try my best. And I don't know, you might have heard of us through what we did at Burning Man. I don't know if any of you have gone there. Burning Man is a city of the future, really, an experimental city that where 70,000 people come together around common values, common principles, which I'll explain a little bit more. And I think it will be interesting to see that together as part of exploring future cities beyond living and working just in general. Something that I find really interesting about that place is that it creates communities, communities that try and improve and change things. In fact, there is the founder of Burning Man that says that real communities grow out of a shared confrontation with survival. They're produced through shared struggle. And it's really kind of interesting to see how that shared struggle creates pockets of initiatives, which eventually kind of changed the world. And I think there's very much that shared struggle around the idea of climate change that I think we're all trying to address through our different fields. And there's another thing that I thought is really interesting. I don't know if you've read the book by Harari called Sapiens, where he says that maybe humans switched from being hunter-gatherers to, civilization and crops, not because they wanted to do increased productivity, but because they wanted to build and run temples. And I thought that's really interesting, because our spiritual self is maybe what united us. And so beyond functionality, I know modernism was all about functionalism and so on, but maybe there is a higher dimension that unites us. And maybe that's something a bit more subtle that we'll discover together. And maybe that's what, also might differentiate a pure technical approach to a slightly higher level one. So those are our two businesses that work hand in hand. This is our studio in London. So we tend to produce things in our office. We're a bit of a mini factory. Beyond, I'm very inspired by people like Jean Prouvé. I don't know if you know him. He was a French engineer type that also had his factory in his office kind of thing, and that allows to produce the thing rather than representation of the things, which I think is really important when you come to understanding carbon footprint. So this is our giant printer. It's about 3 meters. It's a WASP 3MT. We have 2 of those. We have quite a few smaller ones that help us test what things like a shell behavior, and then we crush things. And then we reuse the material. And so this allows us to sort of not be fearful of creating. I think when it comes to environmental design, the answer is always nothing is better than something, because if you just measure carbon, you might as well not exist. And so I think it's really important that we enable creativity without that sort of self-shame in a way. And so to create ecosystems where we can recycle, where we can use materials that don't come from petroleum is really important. So this is called PLA, polylactic acid, and it's basically a material that comes from sugar. And we've done what's called an LCA, life cycle assessment, to compare these materials, petroleum-based plastic being ABS in blue, and in green, a sugar-based PLA. Fermented sugar, in fact. And so you can see that it's pretty much better everywhere, apart from a few things like land use and radiation, like ionizing radiation. This one I don't know, but the land use one we could address through vertical farms. So there's a lot to understand when you compare things in terms of environmental aspects. And I think it's really important to understand that things are not just in one dimension. When you say something is bad or something is worst, it's very binary. But actually, when it comes to environmental design, there's many axes to consider. And so that's what life cycle assessments can do. So this is a sort of larger speculation of what the future of living could be, which is a sort of giant skyscraper that not only can build itself, but also unbuilds itself. Now, I think this idea of unbuilding is completely overlooked. And it's actually really natural, when a plant doesn't have enough light, enough water, it just dies, and another plant sort of grows somewhere else, and the natural cycle enables that freedom. But when it comes to architecture, you're suddenly stuck with ruins for thousands of years, if you're lucky and you're the Parthenon. But most generally, people don't think of afterlife of building. Now, I've pretty much been inspired by Burning Man because you have to think of this afterlife, because you have to leave no trace. And so bringing this idea of ecological thinking to parametric design is why, I guess this term eco-parametric came about, because often would think of technology for its own sake versus in relation to natural behaviors. So this is, for example, some student project that we worked on. This was bamboo being folded according to magnetic fields, with the center of the magnetic points being natural, and this was a sort of piazza that used this steam bent timber. And this was a slightly more conventional project, but looking at the module, typical module size of a building. So to use off-the-shelf material, but to actually use this as a voxel and being able to dissolve this timber to create kind of a system rather than a form. I think this notion of system versus form is really important because then you stop thinking in a top-down fashion and more in a bottom-up way. And so in that spirit, this is a project we're doing in Bacalar in Mexico. And basically we based it on the bending radius of timber. And if you were to unfold these things, they would all unfold into straight lines. And that's a really important concept because before, when I was studying digital architecture, we were told, you could CNC everything. But when you CNC things, you create a lot of waste. You use plywood, which is already a processed material, and then you cut it and then you create waste. Whereas these are all bent digitally into straight elements. And so you actually use timber, the tree, straight out of what it is. I think when you minimize chemical processes, you actually can also help the life cycle assessment of materials. And yeah, so same, when you say I'm using wood, it might not be enough. You might need to dig into what wood, where did it come from, which forest did it come from. And so in this case, we're building a tower in Bali, and the client bought an old bridge, which is interesting. It's a colonial bridge from Indonesia, from a Dutch colonial bridge. He bought it and then took off all the timber, removed all the screws, and then built the tower on the left. And I think that's a really interesting, beautiful thing that we don't have to actually think of projects as their end goal. You can think of your project will become someone else's project later on, and that spirit is a bit strange for architects because we have big egos, as you know. We're known for this kind of character, and I think that's really something that needs to change in order for our profession to progress towards accepting things as systems that are beyond us. And so these are, I'm going to show you a few projects. This is where we started a lot of made projects that we made ourselves as opposed to just designed. So this is the wooden wave, and the previous one was a fashion retail experience. And so these are kind of based on double curving materials with lattice hinge, with origamis. They're very kind of modular in that it's one module that adapts through the compression and expansion of what we call busiest splines. Busiest splines are what, you know, there's a French engineer that worked in a car manufacturer that just had to describe the curvature of cars through an algorithm. And we use that algorithm to bend and expand space. And it's become a bit of a thing where we try and then link that to the lines and extract information for the robots. So this is called G-code. It's the information you send to a 3D printer. And it's important to understand what it is that you send to a printer, because then you are completely free of constraint. And so that means you can be a lot more accurate in the way that you design three-dimensional things, because you are in direct discussion with the craftsman, in this case, the robot. But there is a conversation, although it's a robot, that is important to have, because otherwise you cannot be very, very precise in your analysis of how things are made. So we've taken crazy challenges and keep doing so. You know, I think for some reason, every one of those challenges pushes us to think differently. This, for example, was an installation for Fortnum and Mason in London. And the curvature that you're seeing allows us to build very thin shells. And very thin shells are important because you use less material. So not only do we use sugar, fermented sugar, but we try and minimize the amount of material in order to, and so people were very surprised how light these objects were. And because they're light, it means we use less material, and everything has a sort of consequence. Nice thing is we can like mix it with wood, create like patterning that is a bit more, let's just say less mass produced to some extent, which means that this is my home in Stoke Newington that we're about to finish, and I kind of look forward to showing you all how it looks. But basically this has a lot of, you know, materials that were not petroleum-based, and it's very hard to find them for the home, whether it's the fermented sugar of the balustrade, the clay, we're using clay everywhere, clay boards, clay finishes, recycled glass, and so on and so forth. Keboni wood for the facade. Keboni is a pine that's treated so that it's not like a teak. It's a very common tree that's just added a resin to. And so it's a lot of learning curve, and there's no limit in the scale, which, you know, I put this because I thought living, this is with my wife's engagement ring, and I show this because I worked on it in a similar way that I work with the rest of the project, and that shows that I really mean it. This was 3D printed, and then the white gold was then casted into what's called lost wax. So the prints was replaced with the gold, and the sapphires were scanned and introduced in there. This is a chandelier we're doing in the north of the UK in Scotland. Which is 3D printed in a mixture of fireproof material together with bioplastic and metal. So those are things that we can explore. We kind of proved to some extent that we can scale up slowly. I mean, it's getting there. We're approaching the facade world now. This was for COS, a fashion brand. It's called Conifera. And it was a project made of 700 of these bio bricks that were placed together in order to form this sort of journey, as opposed to a form. It wasn't quite a form. It was more of a journey that went from the earthly to the sky. And you can see these, they almost look like they were hand woven, which is quite interesting. When it comes to 3D printing, you can really minimize materiality. This direction was against the arches, which means that we actually could maximize tension in the system as opposed to compression. This here was a project we did with Chris Brecht, in a great architect from Austria. It was 3D printed in sand. We started from kind of looking at that space and play with the trees that were there, and developed this module that we later on realized we could print with local material, i.e. sand, which was really, and you can see here the biophilic link. Biophilia just means like the love for nature and the understanding of nature and being part of it. And you can see each one of those lines changing in thickness based on the forces going through the system. All right, 14 minutes. I have 6 minutes, and I want to bring you a little bit more in the desert. Bear with me. This is Burning Man. Burning Man has 10 principles that I think are really important for the future of living, whether it's radical inclusion, you know, or self-reliance, self-expression, communal effort. I mean, you can recognize a lot of the discussions that are happening at the moment about inclusion and sort of environmental discussions in the principle of Burning Man, which is why I find it so interesting. It's also heavily inspired by the Californian ideology and things like Buckminster Fuller, you know, idea about how we all are part of a spaceship Earth, and that we all need to consider everything as an integral, holistic system rather than separated elements. So I showed you that, and I think, you know, this is a city. It's a city of 70,000 people that unite for a week and create, and then unbuild itself, and then recreate itself, where everyone is a bit of an actor of the city rather than just a spectator, so an artist. So instead of doing art about the state of society, we do art that creates society around it, is what Larry Harvey, the founder, was saying. So with our students at Westminster, we've been trying to experiment of what that means. And this is, for example, a piece of ply that's cut in half, and then creating this reciprocal structure that leads to projects that kind of are simple to build and simple to assemble, and are based on wasteless designs. These are some of the examples of what we've built and things that we've learned, from the very, very complex parametric digital stuff to the more simple 2x4 pieces of wood that are assembled together. We've learned a lot. We've learned on transportation. This is a truck with the project that was on the right, and then the project that was on the left was sort of placed messily in the truck. And I remember the truck driver telling us that the truck is probably one of the most important designers in the structure, the truck itself. And you see, when I talked about the robot having a discussion with a robot, you can have a discussion with your truck as well, or with your plane, or with your shipping elements. And I think that's really something we ignore. It's the logistics, and the logistics are key to the building being actually green or not. So this is on the right, the bismuth bivouac, and then on the left, the project we never finished. That was a very complex puzzle. We've learned a lot from off-the-shelf timber, so how wood comes out, and then how it can be cut simply, and how we can create structures that follow mathematical rules. I just want to show you this little video of the LEDs going through these tangents. And you can see on the right, people writing down their dreams. And so there was a really nice dialogue with the community, which we thought was really interesting. This is the temple at Burning Man. So every year Burning Man has a temple where people can write things on the structure. And it's often quite emotional things. And at the time I was working on a hotel for Virgin Galactic, which is, going to space and doing space tourism. At the time they needed a hotel before going to space. And this idea of sort of recursive galaxy came about. So this is very simple. It's a recursion in the computer. You tell information to a vector. You say it to move, rotate, on and on and on and on. But as you do this, you can change the parameters, the angle, the length, and so on. And so what I find interesting is when you start linking this with environmental design, for example, letting the light go through in winter and diffusing it in summer, but also just looking at the thermal mass of things, like how we can actually use the cold air to minimize, for example, air conditioning. Air conditioning is about 10 times worse than CO2. So we can work with all these aspects to think of the structure as a system. So Galaxia was a sort of reinterpretation of that building in the desert. And it was based on, again, compression and expansion of space. You can see the center of Galaxia being a lot denser than the rest. It's because it's based on the black hole idea that it would compress and take everything with it. So it starts with portals for humans and then goes through. And so what's interesting is how people were using that project as a secular temple. And so everyone, saw the sort of metaphorical aspect of every piece. There's no columns, so everything seems to float and everything is working together as opposed to in a hierarchical fashion. And so you can see how it was built with a big bike wheel in the center that held everything together because we couldn't build foundations, for example. Each one of those modules were assembled into these bricks as well, similar to the Conifera project. But these bricks were assembled in timber with laser cut metal connections that were actually targeted towards the forces going through the project. And we were all together, 120 volunteers building this, living together, building this for about 18 days. And built from the top down. So built from the very top to give a positive spirit to the team because it was hard. It was very hard. It was very intense. And so we built this from the top down, which I think is quite interesting. And then we opened it to the public and had these really beautiful, altars and messages. And I got married in there. Remember the ring? So I just thought it was really nice to, we talk about the future of living the spaces that you work on and being able to transform, what happens inside into something that I can relate to and that others can relate to. And so it was a really beautiful event. And after a week of it, we all sat down together and set it on fire. It's not ideal. Obviously, don't want people to burn buildings, but what was there, it was a ritual of letting go. And this notion of letting go and actually just removing everything in order for it to start again the next year is something I find quite beautiful. I think none of us are here forever. And so the idea of afterlife of the building and what could happen is I find really interesting. So this summer, what our plan is to build this and disassemble it. This is called Catharsis. It's based on a mathematical geometry, and reassemble it in London, and then have a dialogue between cities where we can actually bring a project in two different places and actually have people dialogue through architecture in cities. So I'll finish here. Obviously all this is very digital, but I think anyone can access that kind of thinking. These are sketches that I work on to just show how these relationships could also be hand-drawn, and it's really a way of thinking that is beyond just the technology. And so I'll leave it there, and I think it's been 21 minutes, so not too bad. And happy to take it to the breakout room. thank you everyone for staying here.
Thanks, Arthur. Great examples and also very inspiring. I hear someone speaking. Okay. Thanks for the inspiring talk. Now we would like to have one final round of questions, or I have a question if nobody else has, and then we were discussing in the meantime if we maybe should do the closing before the networking and have the networking in breakout rooms as a fade out. So maybe this is also good for everyone. But one question before, so like, because you said you also can have discussions with machines and with technology, let's say. How important is that in these processes that you are in, and also in general in maybe also co-creation processes that you use machines like also important parts and maybe also humanize them in that way that you discuss and work with them. How important will that be in the future also for other projects?
It's so important. Like, we're working at the moment on new kinds of furniture that we hope we can sell as part of just the ability to produce locally and 3D print with biomaterial. But without the machines, because those are 3D printed, the design cannot, basically there cannot be a way of thinking design without the testing, and that testing is this dialogue with the machine. And if we don't do that testing, and if you just stop the designer at before even iterating, we call it iterations. There's a really nice book by Catmull, Ed Catmull, who's now he's the boss of Walt Disney Studio, but he was the founder of Pixar. And you can see how he had in his team pictures, and then he would draw on top of the pictures, and then another one would come, and he's like, never be scared to comment and iterate, because that's where creativity happens. And often we sacralize design a bit too much, so we're fearful of losing control or having the robot decide for us, or have the algorithm decide for us, and especially in parametric design. But I think that's sort of not a real thing, is because it's full of fear. It's not actually what happens. The robot needs you, the algorithm needs you. They need to know the principles. Like, they don't just come up with stuff. I don't know, there's this fear that they will take over, but they don't just like suddenly, I mean, maybe we've watched Terminator too much. But you'd see, I mean, we are surrounded with machines. They're all around me. You can probably hear them during the talk. And they're basically, I don't want to say dumb, but a little bit, they won't stop if you don't tell them to stop. And so they are a tool, an extension of yourself and an extension of your creativity, and they need this dialogue. So I see there's someone else asking a question on the chat. Yes. I don't know if I can jump in on that. It says impressive exactly. Building, but where does the funding comes from? And it's a really good question, because when you start innovating or you do things that are a bit out of the ordinary, it's a lot easier if you're a bit more entrepreneurial. So if you're acting like an entrepreneur rather than just a commissioned architect or a commissioned designer. So what we do is we fundraise. So for example, our fabrication company has investors, and so we have to do business plans, and we have to show how it's working as a business. And architects don't do that much, because I think they don't want to sell their company, or they don't want to just have others own. And also, you don't really do scalable companies when you're a designer, because it relies so much on you. And so with this new kind of thinking, it's a bit different, because it's about techniques. So technique-led design. So those techniques can lead to IP, which can lead to value independently from you. And so I think that's another way to think. So that's how we got funding. In terms of Burning Man explicitly, since he specified, we were fundraising through selling t-shirts, doing parties with DJs coming and offering their time. And then we did like many of those parties. Eventually had a lot of help from doing fundraising dinners where I would explain the concept and people would write checks, and then a bit like a politician, I guess. And then eventually we had one big donor that was really convinced by the effort. Usually these people come at the end when they see that it's going to happen, it's real. And it was the founder of Google, Sergey Brin, who gave the final check. And he was so lovely, and he came to visit us, and he was an amazing kind of help. He even asked to take the drill and go and participate in the build, because I think it was very important that everyone feels a bit equal in this endeavor. But yeah, definitely without him, I don't know if this would have happened.
Okay, and there's also another questions, but maybe we can move this to the breakout session with you. It's about materials, especially about the mycelium. So Denise asks, and I'm sure she will join the breakout session with you and ask you maybe a little bit more. And as I already said, I would switch to the wrapping up session now, which only takes a few minutes, and then we will open the breakout rooms with Rafaela, Arthur, and an open room for having lunch together or a coffee and having a final talk, and then we will fade out. So thanks for participating our conference on co-creation, experience sharing, projects of the COCO4CCI project, but also the introduction in the new European Bauhaus. And before I ask my colleague and COCO4CCI lead partner, Grit Ackermann, for a final statement about today, I'd like to invite you to fill out our small survey on Slido. David is posting the link to the chat. So please tell us, how did you like the event, the topics, the speakers, the organization, and everything. That's good for us to know, to make the next experience even better, hopefully. So thanks from my side. And in the meantime, I'd give the word to Grit. So what's your takeaway from the discussions from today?
Thank you, Wolfgang. I think the conference today has shown how important the creative and cultural sector is for tackling the challenges of the future. And I'm glad that we met today here at the conference with so many people that work and share the same goals. And I think it was altogether a very impressive demonstration of the impact of CCI in different areas of, not only on the businesses, but on all different aspects of life and society. Sorry, and it was also a good demonstration of how powerful cross-sectoral or cross-disciplinary collaboration can be, and what its potential for the future. I would like to thank you all for participating in today's conference, especially our guests and speakers. Also like to thank the Intellect Europe program for believing in our project in the first place and providing the funding to try this really exciting and new journey with our team of partners. And I would like to thank Wolfgang and Gisa Creare for organizing the conference today. And all together, I hope that we see each other either online or face-to-face in similar initiatives with new projects and initiatives. It was really great to be with you today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Grit, for that. I also think it was a really inspiring and interesting conference today, and very, many thoughts I have in my mind now, and we should definitely continue this at another point. So please use our Padlet. I will share the link again for networking. Add yourself here, and you can use it to look up interesting context from today and start networking and collaborating and creating hopefully amazing products and services. So One final remark: in the next days, we will also upload this recording and the video to our websites. Also, you will have our 2 publications. They are to be found there on our COCO4CCI webpage. I will share the link again. And the one publication is the more strategic one, called Supporting Cooperation Colliders between CCI and ABM within the Interac Central Europe region. And we also publish our Lessons Learned and Best Practices booklet, in which we again share our experiences in co-creation between creative and cultural industries and other industries, especially manufacturing companies. And we will also send around all those links and info to everyone that registered on Eventbrite before. And yeah, you can also find, of course, all our COCO4CCI partners on this website. And thanks to them, I would also like to mention them too, because all of our partners were also, of course, involved in COCO4CCI, but also in creating this and developing and organizing this conference. Very warm and friendly thank you to all of our partners for supporting us here with speaker suggestions and hosting the rooms and doing everything else in the background. And of course, for all the amazing projects that we had during these last 3 years. And we will share them in the best practice publications, as I said, or the best ones. And I hope we see each other soon. And last but not least, I would like, of course, to thank all of you, the participants here, for the discussions, for the questions. And thanks, Michaela, Yuri, Agnes, Rafaela, Arthur, Grit, and Mr. Ebermann, of course, for the contributions. And thanks to my team here at Creative Region Linz and Upper Austria, and also my colleagues from Business Upper Austria. And now let's have a final session and networking and coffee and lunch in our breakout rooms. And we are all open for further connections and collaborations. Feel free to contact us for discussing future projects or ideas to boost the culture and creative industry. Thanks for your participation and have a nice day. We see each other in the breakout rooms.